The God of Jacob, the Spirit. Now we come to Jacob. Jacob, a subtle supplanter, needed more than just the experience of the calling and the inheritance. He mainly needed the dealings to transform him from a man in the flesh to a man in the spirit. So it is very meaningful that the third of the triune God is the Spirit who worked upon the subtle, supplanting Jacob to discipline and transform him into a prince of God. Here in Jacob, we see regeneration, discipline, transformation, and the growth and maturity in life. All of this is the work of the Spirit. So the God of Jacob should be the God the Spirit. The respective experiences of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob being three aspects of a complete one. As the transfer of race began with Abraham, passed through Isaac, and was completed with Jacob, so their experiences should be considered as one complete experience. It is implied that the three were one. The triune God considered them as members of a corporate man for his dealings and for him to be their God in this way. The last 39 and a half chapters of Genesis are a biography of a corporate person composed of 3 plus 1. If we add together all the different aspects of the experiences of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, including Joseph, we see a clear picture of the complete experience of the called ones. Abraham's experience. Abraham had a good beginning with being called, but there is no record of his being chosen or of his reaching an ultimate and matured end. For his completion, Abraham had the need of Jacob's being chosen and of Jacob's matured end. Do you believe that, according to the record of Genesis, Abraham attained to the highest and consummate maturity of life? We cannot find such a record. Abraham's offering Isaac on the altar was the climax of his spiritual life. However, he did not reach maturity. In chapter 24, we see that he did something marvelous in obtaining a wife for his son, Isaac. But after that, he took another wife. This shows us that Abraham was not matured. Where then is Abraham's maturity? His maturity is in Jacob's maturity. Let us use as an illustration of this the late visits that Abraham and Jacob made to Egypt. Abraham's trip to Egypt was shameful, for he told a lie about his wife. But Jacob had a glorious visit. He did not go to Egypt in order to take advantage of others. He went there with a blessing hand, even blessing Pharaoh, the greatest king on earth at the time. This reveals that the maturity of life is with Jacob and not with Abraham. According to the Bible, the greater always blesses the lesser. No young one can bless an older one. In order to bless people, you need the maturity of life. Does the Bible ever say that Abraham blessed someone? No, Jacob, on the contrary, was so mature in life that he could bestow blessings on others. When he blessed his grandchildren, he did it clearly, not blindly as did Isaac. When Joseph tried to change the position of his hands, Jacob refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. Jacob was fully matured. Although Abraham was high in the life of faith, we do not see in him the maturity of life that we see in Jacob. For the maturity of life, Abraham had to rely upon Jacob. Although Abraham was the grandfather, he still needed his grandson for his completion. By this, we can see that, according to experience, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are not individuals but three members of the whole body. Likewise, we are members one of another, and in certain aspects of life, we need to depend on each other. Isaac's experience. Isaac is another illustration of this. Isaac's experience was without beginning or end. He was never called and he never matured. Although he blessed his sons, he did it blindly, not so clearly as Jacob did with his grandsons. Isaac needed the beginning of both. Abraham's and Jacob's experiences at the end of Jacob's experience for his completion. Isaac was in the middle. He was never dealt with. Although his father and son were dealt with, he did not need any dealings. He was fully covered by the two ends in the matter of God's dealing. Many times it is good for us to stay in the midst of other members of the body, for those ahead of us and those behind us become our completion. This is the coordination among the members of the body. Jacob's experience. In his experience, Jacob had the best, highest, and most matured end. Although he began as a subtle supplanter, after being dealt with by God, he matured to the uttermost. Although there are so many good ones, such as Abel, Enoch, Noah, and Abraham, in the book of Genesis, no one is as mature as Jacob. After he matured, his supplanting hands became blessing hands. Whenever someone came under his hands, there was no condemnation, only blessing. He not only blessed the descendants of faith, but even the worldly people. He was so high and so mature. Although Jacob was matured in life, he had neither the experience of being called nor of the life of faith. Neither did he have the experience of the inheriting of grace. For his completion, Jacob needed to have Abraham's being called and Abraham's experience in the life of faith, as well as Isaac's experience in the inheriting of grace. Jacob was poor in faith. He did not know how to believe, he only knew how to supplant. After Abraham had been blessed by Melchizedek following the slaughter of kings, he met the king of Sodom. The king of Sodom encouraged Abraham, who had gained the victory for him, to take the spoil for himself. But Abraham refused to take even one thread, believing in the sufficiency of the Almighty God. Abraham had received the blessing from Melchizedek and did not need help from the king of Sodom. That was Abraham's experience of faith. But Jacob's experience was very different. Wherever he went, he was the first to supplant. In the midst of his supplanting life, Jacob even made a deal with God. When God appeared to him in a dream at Bethel, Jacob said upon waking, "If God will be with me, keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, then shall the Lord be my God. And of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee." Jacob made a deal with God. If God would take care of his needs, Jacob would give him 10% in return. Jacob seemed to be saying, "Oh God, if you will take care of my food, clothing, and all my needs, then I will give you a 10% commission." According to that arrangement, Jacob received 90% and God only 10%. We see by this that Jacob did not have Abraham's faith.